As the state budget continues to spiral out of control, the question of gambling once again becomes a topic for serious discussion. Texans spend approximately $4 billion each year in casinos in surrounding states. So maybe it's time to look at ways to keep that money closer to home. Advocates say gambling would boost the economy, add thousands of jobs, and help balance the state budget. Opponents say that gambling is not business or family friendly and would lead to more crime in the state. Tonight, is gambling good for the Lone Star State? I'm Ernie Manous, and this is Houston 8. Joining us tonight are Robert Kohler, CEO and General Manager of TLG Inc., a consulting and data research company. James Wortman, Director, Gaming and Research Institute, University of Houston. And Jack Pratt, Sr., Chairman, Texas Gaming Association. Welcome to all of you. And I'll start right here with Jack. What is going on in the State House that brings this topic back to the forefront?
Well, we've been trying for a while to educate the legislators as to the benefits of destination resort casinos in the state of Texas. And so this educational process of showing the good, bad, the indifferent, what it could produce economically, the amount of jobs, that's created a heightened interest at this particular session because of the budget crisis.
Now, Robert, is it possibly going to happen now? Is this a real possibility?
Well, no, certainly not as far as the folks that I represent, which is the Christian Life Commission of the Baptist General Convention of Texas. Very much like previous sessions, there's a group of folks that come up to Austin and try to convince, more legislators than not that somehow or another it'd be in the best interest of the state to introduce that type of gambling.
Okay, and James, before we even begin with you, you are an employee of the University of Houston, but you're here on your own?
Yes, as such, I work for the Conrad Hilton College of the University of Houston, and as such, my comments are my own as opposed to attempting to represent either the college or the university.
Okay, that said, so it's back in the state legislature. There's all this talk about it, but historically speaking, is anything really going to happen here?
Interesting that you asked that question. I've been here for 15 years. When I first arrived here at the request of the dean of the Hilton College and the Hilton Corporation, who ran a gaming operation at that particular time, everybody thought, gaming is coming to the state of Texas. Obviously, in 15 years, it has not.
Okay. But what makes this, I think, a real possibility at this point is there's all the talk of the state budget being out of control, and here's a way to say, hey, we can help. If you approve this, it means more money to the state. And I've seen everything from $1.2 billion in taxes up to $4.5 billion in revenue that the state could generate if casinos or if gambling were made, I want to say, more legal in the state, because we'll talk about that in a second.
Well, basically, under the bill that our association is sponsoring, and we have strong sponsors both in the Senate with Senator Ellis from Houston here and from Jose Menendez from San Antonio in the House. But under our bill, there would be 8 large destination resort casinos, so-called integrated casinos. And there would be 8 of the tracks that would compete likewise for licenses for slot machines at the tracks. There are 3 Indian tribes currently here in Texas, and they would be entitled to have full casinos because once it's legalized in Texas, they would automatically get it. But there would be some sharing of revenues for the state under that arrangement. The economic impact of the bill is pretty well a big economic development bill, not just a gaming bill. There's all types of gaming, but if you peel the layers back on all of the different forms of gaming, legal or illegal, the only one, the National Gaming Impact Study, done in 1999 by the federal government and paid for by the taxpayers of the United States, the only one that they suggested that states use was large destination resorts because of the huge economic impact they created via lots of jobs. and the bulk of their business was generated from outside the state versus turning over currency locally within the state. So our bill is large destination resorts, basically is the big economic impact of our bill. From a standpoint of the economic impact, we've had 2 or 3 economic analysis done by large, substantial companies like the Richard Ellis Company, by Ray Perryman in Waco, and by Professor Lattin at the hotel school. But all of them come into the same range. Under our bill, the economic impact at Texas would be somewhere between $40 and $50 billion.
Okay, so Jack, that sounds great to me. Robert, why shouldn't it?
Well, look, you have to. There's a couple of hurdles that you have to get across. All that does sound great, but fortunately for us, and maybe unfortunately for the Gaming Association, is that the state's been down this road before. They've been told that turning to the expansion of gambling can be a prudent revenue mechanism, and they've got to. One, you've got to believe all those numbers, and 2, you've got to get across the hurdle that 10 out of 10 Texans are walking around that were sold a bill of good on the lottery, that were told. And more importantly, they understood. I mean, it's a as far as public policy decisions that are out there in this state, as far as distrust of government, it's been my experience that the folks, when you mention, even this topic, they just kind of shake their head and they look at you and say, we've been down that. Wasn't the lottery supposed to solve our education problems?
Okay, and I'm going to come back to you on more of this in 1 second, but I do want to say the way we talk about this often, it's like, who knows what will happen? It sounds like it could be good, and others say, well, it could be bad. But we forget a lot of other states have put this in. So, James, I want to ask you, has it been good or bad for other states that have taken it? What happened in Louisiana? How were things in New Jersey? What has happened when a state brings it in?
It's a very interesting question. As a matter of fact, the American Gaming Association came out with an article yesterday which indicated that 80% of the states that have casinos currently would keep the casinos if they had to vote it all over again because of the economic impact. Is it always positive? No, it's not. There are negative aspects of it.
Okay, but aside from people's perception of an industry, looking at the states and those states' financial situations, has gambling benefited those stations?
Yes.
Those states?
Yes. But it depends on what happens within the state itself. It's how the state government chooses to spend the money. New Jersey, for example. When we put the law in New Jersey, it was dedicated to senior citizens and education only. Could not be changed. Other states, the money goes into a general fund, never to be seen again.
And to come back to a point that Robert was making, we got this on our Twitter feed about it. I heard that gambling money is for the good of Texas. If that is like the lotto money is good for our schools, we haven't quite seen that pass yet. So is this money still good for our state? And it's pretty much going back to the point you were making.
And it's important. And you also got to look at the question of this is being sold as entertainment. This is being sold as no difference from opening bowling alleys or picture shows in this state, and that somehow or another that they can make enough money that they can contribute to the bottom line and make a difference in funding, whether it be education or health care. He mentioned the AGA, and what's real important is, it's the only type wink, wink, nod, nod entertainment that the folks that proponents of it don't participate in it. Mr. Fahrenkopf, who's head of AGA, didn't want a casino in his backyard. And, I've challenged people that go find another entertainment business that's so. You go to the winery in Fredericksburg, they drink their wine. Sandra Bullock goes to the movies that she puts on. But, even Steve Wynn, who, I happen to be a big fan, but if you can find out all you need to know about this type of enterprise by Googling 60 Minutes and Steve Wynn, and he'll tell you. The only people that win at this are the owners of the casino.
But Jack, let me come to you on this area then. Yes. Gambling, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is more than just the moment of the gaming. It is the gambling, I almost want to say lifestyle that goes along with it. It is the resort. It is the entertainment. It is the experience. I mean, and so part of it is the gaming process.
That's correct. And I think that's where Rob and his clients missed the point completely by attacking and being opposed to gaming for moral reasons. The large destination resorts, 2/3 of their volume is non-gaming revenue. Only 1/3 is casino revenue. Now, when I originally was in Vegas, and I owned the Las Vegas Sands many years ago, that 80% of it was gaming and only 20% of it was other. But today, these integrated resorts have fabulous restaurants, fabulous chefs from all over the world, great convention centers, great new venues for production shows, all of the things you would expect to find on Broadway and in major cities for entertainment. And this is the entertainment business. The casino floor actually represents about 5% of the total square footage in those large integrated resorts. And that's what we're talking about in Texas. We're not talking about massive slot machine parlors. We're not talking about illegal 8-liners. We're not talking about any of those types of facilities. We're talking about integrated resort facilities. So the bulk of the American public, and poll after poll after poll shows that over 80% think that this form of gaming is all right for themselves and is all right for the general public. So the acceptance of this has been rather strong for many, many years. And the proliferation of gaming across the United States is proven it by now almost 40 states that have it. And there's probably 8 or 9 states at a minimum currently have legislation for them. And 4 or 5 of the states that have legalized casinos are in process of trying to increase the number of licenses. So it's well accepted, and it isn't a moral issue at all. I certainly respect Rob and his clients of their feelings that there's some moral issue involved, but that argument hasn't won in most of the states that have legalized gaming.
Let me give you another argument then on it, and that is the comparison. We'll get right to it. 1 second. Okay. The comparison of gambling to a Ponzi scam, where people assume they are going to win, yet only is happening is their money is being taken away from them. That we are almost instituting a legal way to pick people's pockets.
Yeah, I disagree, and I think most of the people that go to these destination resort casinos feel exactly the same way. They go for the entertainment. 1/3 of the people that go to Las Vegas never spend a dime in the casino. They're there solely for the purpose of the shows, the fine restaurants, great accommodations of rooms, all of it at a great price value to any other major city in the world. So it is entertainment they're going for. 1/3 of the people do not spend money in the casino.
Okay, I'm going to jump over to Robert now because I feel like I haven't given you enough time here.
Well, just keep in mind, okay, let me say 2 things. They would have you believe that the slot machines are just 1/3 of the business. Just something that, oh, by the way, is on the side of the great restaurants, which no doubt, and the expensive shopping. Well, if that's the case, then we'd support your economic development as far as doing what would amount to 75% of your business. We don't believe it, and we don't think that Las Vegas was built that way. And there's beautiful, wonderful resorts in Las Vegas, which, what we found is businesses in the state really ought to have their head straight open, because look, you go into these facilities, and even if you spend 1/3 of your money in the slot machines and go to the restaurants, those restaurants are in this facility, are in this business model. They're not the ones that currently exist in this economy. And don't believe me. Go to your own experience, or go into these facilities in Las Vegas or wherever you'd like to go, and you go find the sign that says, "Hey, when you're done, take a break and go down to the restaurant that's 100. It's been here 100 years." They don't do that. They don't share their dollars, and that's very, very important when you start talking about throwing around. And you yourself said anywhere from 1.2 to 4 billion.
Whatever it is. All right, I'm going to go over to James for a minute.
If I could.
Oh, all right.
Because
we'll get to you, James. Hold 1 second.
The 1.1 or 1.2 billion that we could provide in this biennium, that's basically the larger part of it is upfront fees that casino companies would have to put up, and a smaller number then for the tracks, because they could be open much quicker than the large integrated resorts could be open. So that's a real number. You can feel it, touch it. It's in our bill. You have to put up the money to bid, so there can be no disagreement of that. Once it's totally up and operating, and again, this has been verified by the casino companies that we're talking with, verified by economists that have done 3 major reports, not with each other, separate and apart, that when it's up and operating, it would generate about $1.65 billion in direct casino tax money, which we call a privilege tax, because these companies pay all of the taxes that any other corporation in Texas would pay. But on top of that, they pay a privilege tax called a gaming tax. That direct gaming tax is about 1.65, based upon conservative numbers of average volume in slot machines, average numbers of table play across the country in these larger, finer facilities. When they're all up and operating, when you put that direct tax together of 1.65 by 2 is $3.3 billion on a biennium. That you can count and you can rely upon.
Okay,
and every state that's legalized it, those numbers have proven to be the fact.
Let me go over to James for a minute here and say, in some way, isn't this discussion just silly that we're having it, considering there are gaming rooms in Texas that operate right now. There's internet gaming that you can do. There's the lotto. There are racetracks. We already have gambling in our state.
I have 2 points in answer to your question. Number one, what is gambling? What is gaming? Gambling is the one that you folks like to use because it kind of puts a negative point of view. Gaming is the part that the casinos like to use because it's gaming, it's fun, it's entertainment. Merriam-Webster Dictionary states that gambling is putting of something of value at risk in order to achieve a greater reward. Well, guess what? We do that every single day. Have we heard of the stock market? Have we heard of starting a business? Have we heard of getting married? All right. Number 2, if casinos are put up and they're bad, nobody forces anybody to go inside. Nobody that I know, Jack, and my experience in the industry and yours, nobody says you need to come up with money and play. If you don't want to play, you don't have to. If you don't want to frequent a casino, you don't have to.
Somewhere,
There's
though,
no
that I've read
necessity.
that up to 5% of a population in a city where a casino will go up will have addiction problems with gambling. That seems like a very large percentage of a population.
It's not. According to the American Association of Problem Gambling, 3% of the population who comes into a casino becomes addicted. Not a large number of people, yes, but not a large percentage.
But if
of
I
people.
opened a restaurant where 3% of the people that ate there would get ill, somebody's going to come in and question what's going on. For every 100 people, 3 people get sick or worse, die. Wouldn't that come under curiosity for the state?
I would say so, but going to your same restaurant indication, you also serve alcohol at that restaurant. Do more than 3% of the people who come to your restaurant become drunk? Should all of a sudden the state become investigating you with regards to that?
Good point. Over to Robert.
Well, keep in mind, gaming and gambling, what that term has become, because again, I worked in the industry for 12 years, and I used to say, I don't get the difference. And
right, you were on the Texas Lotto Committee.
You should understand that in Louisiana, gambling's still illegal. It's still in their constitution. Gaming is legal. So the industry has used the finite of words.
Hold that thought right there, James. Clarify that for me.
The situation is gaming has been passed by the state of Louisiana and has become so successful that there are political action committees in Louisiana who are sending money to the anti-gambling establishment to try and cancel this bill because they realize that gambling
back to the
comes
point
to
that
Texas.
Gambling is illegal, but gaming is legal in Louisiana.
Not that I know of. Not that I'm aware of.
That is correct.
I'm not familiar with that either.
Interesting point. I'm just trying to find
I
out.
operated there for a number of years.
Yeah.
Hollywood
Okay.
Casino in Shreveport. So.
All right, Robert, continue.
The argument that we already have gambling in the state lottery resonates well, but keep in mind $1 and Mr. Pratt said something that's not said in Austin. This is a tax, so for a member of the legislature to even go down this road to even consider it, number one, you've got to consider that it is a tax. So you've got a tax, but right now $1 wagered on the lottery,
but paid for by the casinos and not charged to the consumer.
Well, but hang on just a second. Now, a dollar wagered on the lottery, the state's receiving 28 cents, okay, tax rate. Okay, $1 for this type of enterprise, $1 put in a slot machine, which I'm being told that it's a third, even whatever the amount it is. It generates a significant amount of your gaming revenue when you own a casino, the slot machines, and the tax that the state would receive would be less than 2 cents, a penny. So the difference is it's a much more ineffective tax to collect money, and the idea that somehow or another that this is a volunteer.
Okay, I'm going to hold you right there. I'm going to go to James for clarification. You're my go-to guy.
Thank you. The states establish what the tax rate is going to be on the gross amount. So to say that $1 placed in a slot machine, they only get 2 cents out of is ridiculous. Yes, slot machines do create a majority of a casino's revenue. All right, 80% as of last year of a casino's revenue come from slot machines. Only 20% come from table games. But when the states establish a tax, it's a tax on gross casino revenues. All right, and that is established by the state. It can be as small as, it's 6% in Las Vegas, it's 8% in New Jersey, up to as high as 50% in Illinois.
What are we thinking of putting as a percentage? Do we know at this point?
15%.
15%
on
of gross.
The destination resort casinos and 35% on the slot machines at the tracks.
Okay, Robert,
what the casino industry doesn't talk about is they don't use, let me give you an example, the lottery business. You spend, and it's advertised, they're very proud to say that there were $3.7 billion in sales in this state for the lottery. In other words, Texans spent $3.7 billion. It generated $1 billion. What the casino industry doesn't like to talk about is how much money actually has to be spent to generate that net amount. Because keep in mind, $1 wagered, 93, depending on the business model, because business model is different, but anywhere from 91 to up to 98 cents of every dollar goes to pay prizes, goes into a prize pool. It's what is left over that is taxed. You don't tax prizes. You tax what is left over.
Actually, if in the 90% were the winners, that's pretty good odds.
Right, but it's
James.
not.
It is, but it's rewagered.
New Jersey has a 17% return on slot machines. So 83% conceivably out of the entire cycle of a slot machine gets returned to the player. 17% minimum. All right. Other states as high as 20 or 25. Right, go to the state. Again, it becomes an individual, statewide decision on what they want to do as far as what kind of return they're going to get.
Okay. If I can add something, and truly in Austin you have this argument of let the people decide. And what I've told people is truly the Texas Gaming Association, our position is they decide when they vote. Okay, that's the gold standard. But at least the Texas Gaming Association and their bill is saying let the people decide on everything. There's other factions walking around the Capitol that say, let the people decide, well, kinda, what we think, what we just want. But
the Texas Gaming Association has never said, let the people decide on everything. We're saying in this issue, because polling after polling shows that 84 to 85% of the registered voters in the state want to vote on this issue. Irregardless how they want to vote, they want to vote on this issue. And I disagree with you that I, as a registered voter in the state, elected legislature, I do not expect him to make every decision for me. Well, I expect to have a voice, and the Tea Party move forward very rapidly on the basis, give us our voice. And that's all we're saying.
And what we say very simply to legislators, you know what, if you came to Austin, when you were running around your district and you were talking to people and you told them that when you come to Austin you're going to vote for this issue, then King's X, that's the way it's supposed to be. That's why there's been a chocolate.
Am I getting you right in assuming what you're saying is that they want to put a bill forward to be voted on by the public, but that the public doesn't have all the full information? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, no, it has to be vetted first. And it's the oldest trick in the book in Austin on this issue is, you don't have to be for this. It's okay, but let the people decide.
Right.
And what we say is, you know what, they did decide. They decided when they elected you. If you were in your district and you did not say anything about this.
But what happens when you hear 85% of the people in Texas want to vote on this?
Well, don't you think if that were true, that every member that wanted to serve in the Texas legislature would right now be up on their websites, I will support this?
Well, let's go to James. What do we know about the constituents? And we're almost out of time. Okay. I'm just letting you all know.
The second oldest political trick is if we don't let it out of committee, then it'll never be voted on. So here we go. The political action committees, as I mentioned before, from Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico, are saying, here's money, don't let it out of committee, and you'll never get gambling in Texas.
In our opening read, when we started this whole thing, we said about $4 billion is leaving the state every year to go to surrounding states. If, in fact, we have gambling in Texas, are we assuming most of that will stay here?
80% of New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Louisiana comes from Texas.
Well, they're counting me out, so I can't even let you say anything else. I can't. We are out of time, but I will tell you that we are far from being done with this topic. I hope all of you will rejoin us again.
Thank you.
A spirited conversation,
so
and thank you for helping to educate us on all these issues.
Okay.
Now, each week we invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS.org. Simply click on the local program bar, pick Houston 8, and you can join our online community. Read about the guests, learn more about the topic, and even watch past episodes. Now join us next week on Houston 8. We'll be speaking with acclaimed documentarian Stanley Nelson, known for his films on Jonestown, Wounded Knee, and his newest one on the civil rights movement called Freedom Riders, which will be airing right here on Houston PBS on May 16th. If you have a question or comment you would like for us to share on this topic, feel free to email us at houston8@houstonpbs.org. And that does it for us tonight. Until next time, I'm Ernie Manous. Thank you for joining us.